Okay, so one day, the Early Bird restaurant used 15 dozen eggs for 200 breakfast customers. At this rate, approximately how many dozen eggs are needed for 300 breakfast customers? All right, so in order to do this, we have to set up a proportion. First, let me just write that breakfast customers. I'm just going to use that as BC, and dozen eggs. I'm just going to put DE. I think it just makes life a little easier when I write it out. Okay. Now, so 15 dozen eggs over 200 breakfast customers is equal to, let's see, 300 at, so the question says, at this rate approximately how many dozen eggs are needed for 300 breakfast customers? So at the end of the day, we need to find out dozen eggs here, X dozen eggs, for how many? 300 breakfast customers. All right. Now, this is a simple cross multiply, find the X. If you don't know how to do this, you can watch the other videos. I explain it in more detail. On an exam, you would never go this slow. You would just go as quickly as possible. But for the sake of explanation, I will take my time and make sure you understand what's happening, which is, I think, obviously more important than just rushing through it. Okay, so 15 dozen eggs multiplied. So 15 dozen eggs multiplied by 300 breakfast customers is equal to X dozen eggs multiplied by 200 breakfast customers. Okay? Now, 15 times 300 is 15 times 3, 45. 4,500 dozen eggs times breakfast customers, which is equal to X dozen eggs times 200 breakfast customers. Okay. Now, we need to isolate this X by itself. So we have to get rid of this 200 breakfast customers. Let's divide both sides by 200 breakfast customers. So then this guy cancels out here, and then whatever you do to the right hand side or left hand side, you do to the opposite side as well. So 200 breakfast customers. And now breakfast customers cancels out, and you're left with 4,500 divided by 200. 2 goes into 45. 2, 4, 0, 5. So 22.5. Erase this. Dozen eggs is equal to X dozen eggs, and you can actually cancel out these dozen eggs as well. Dozen eggs cancel this side, dozen eggs cancels on this side, and ultimately you're left with X equals 22.5. However, you can't, none of the answers are 22.5. You would have to round up, because you can't have 22. You can have 22.5 dozen eggs, but it's saying how many dozen eggs are needed for 300 breakfast customers. So you need a minimum of 23 dozen eggs. And I hope that makes sense. So x equals 23.